Good afternoon, everyone. I am Assemblyman Michael Benedetto, Chairman of the Assembly Education Committee. And I've been chosen to do this because of my fine melodious voice. But at any rate, um, 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 we are here today to screen candidates for an opening on the Board of Regents. Section 202 of the Education Law provides for the election by the legislature of members of the Board of Regents. They are a total of 17. There are a total of 17 regents, 13 by judicial district, and 4 at large. Now, today, we're interviewing for the vacancy in Judicial District 4 due to the unfortunate passing of Regent Beverly Odekirk, who served us so well for so many years. This seat is to fill the remaining 3 years of her term. The law further provides that the regents must be elected by concurrent resolution of the assembly or by joint resolution of the legislature. The Board of Regents oversees the entire educational enterprise of New York. The board's most prominent role is setting learning standards for elementary and secondary education. The Board of Regents also regulates 55 licensed professions and registers academic programs at all colleges and universities, including SUNY and CUNY. Also within the purview of the Board of Regents are public libraries, museums, historical societies, the Statue of Liberty, the state archives, public broadcasting, vocational rehabilitation, and the regulation of proprietary vocational schools. The Board of Regents derives its authority from the New York State Constitution and Education Law. Specifically, Section 207 of the Education Law grants the board power to exercise legislative functions concerning educational policies and establish rules for implementing those policies. I am here today with my colleagues from the Assembly, the Higher Education Chairperson, Deborah Glick, from the New York State Senate, Education Chair, Shelley Mayers, and from Higher Education Chair, Toby Stravinsky. I'll turn it over at this particular time to my assembly colleague, Miss Glick, if she would like to say a couple of opening words.
Well, just to say that, there are 7 candidates we will be speaking with. We want to try to stick to schedule, which is about 20 minutes per interviewee. And if people would simply raise hands, and I will try, if you have a question, we normally give people 3 or 4 minutes to explain why they want to be a regent, something about their experience. And then I will call on folks, the chairs first, and then other members. And I just want to acknowledge that we have Assembly members Warner, Smullen, Otis, Jones, and Smith with us today. And on the Senate side, we have the chairs, Mayor and Stavisky, and Senator Comrie from the wonderful borough of Queens.
Thank you.
And with that, you're in charge.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And let us move over to the State Senate and Chair of Education, Ms. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Benedetto. Good to be here. Thank you to my colleagues, the Chair of Higher Education, Senator Stavisky, and Senator Leroy Comrie. I suspect we'll be joined by others. I do want to thank all those who put their name forward. This is one of the most important jobs to those of us who care about education, not only of children, but of adults and the professions and the vast range of responsibilities of those on the regents. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of collegial work. It requires being a team player, being thoughtful, thinking of a district that exceeds beyond your own personal knowledge because you have statewide responsibilities. And it really is something that has great significance to our state, and we hold it in very high regard. And that's why you have members participating who are on these committees of jurisdiction and those who may just be interested in ensuring that our education system continues to be the best it can be. So it's my honor to participate today with my really my co-chair in this, Senator Stavisky, and maybe she will say a few words.
Senator Stavisky.
Just wanted to be sure I was unmuted. Thank you, Chairs Benedetto, Glick, Mayor, and our colleagues for joining us. New York, I think, is unique in the way we select our regents, the policy-making body that is so important to not just children, but people from early childhood through senior citizen years. The uniqueness where the regents choose the Commissioner of Education, that is unique in the United States. I can't think of any other state that selects the Chief Education Officer in this manner. And I think that shows the importance that we place. This goes back to our early days as a nation. And we've had some wonderful regents. And my favorite, of course, was Alexander Hamilton, who served as a regent. I don't think they mentioned that in the musical, but nevertheless, it's a prestigious position. And we thank all 7 people for applying. And I look forward to listening to what everybody has to say. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Stavisky. We have been joined by the ranker on the Education Committee in the Assembly, Mr. Smith. We have also been joined by Assemblyman Billy Jones and Assemblyman Walczyk. We have introduced the chairs to say a few words. Is there anybody else that wants to say a few words before we begin the interviews? Okay.
I could, Mr. Chair.
Doug Smith, go right ahead.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman and the chairs. I think this is an important exercise. Every year we convene to interview the Board of Regents candidates, and I think it's critically important that members of this legislature get an opportunity to see the educational feelings, the thoughts of our people who may serve on this very prestigious body that determines education policy for over 3 million public and non-public school students across the state. And, you know, at the very sad and unfortunate passing of Beverly Odekirk, who I know we all held in high regard, you know, it's going to be big shoes to fill, but I hope that today we can work together to find a worthy successor that can make all of us proud and work on behalf of the children of the state. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. And I see that Ms. Werner would like to say a few words. Carrie, go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman Benedetto. The 4th Judicial District is has been blessed to have Beverly Odekirk as our regent for 5 or 6 years. She was amazing, and certainly the rural schools that are the predominant form of education in the 4th Judicial District were well served by her energy and passion and enthusiasm and experience with rural schools. And I think as we review all of the resumes and we talk to all of the candidates, and certainly all of them bring unique characteristics to the opportunity, I would just encourage that we think about the how the role of this particular regent plays in amplifying the needs of rural school districts across the state, and that's an important element to the selection of the next regent to represent the 4th Judicial District. Thank you very much for all of your work on this, and thank you to the staff for setting this up on an unusual schedule.
Thank you,
I-
Ms. Werner. And lastly, I see Mr. Walczyk. You would like to have a few words.
Yes, we
Go
would.
ahead.
I want to
Oh.
welcome the ranking member on the Higher Education Committee.
Thank you, Chairman, Chairwoman. Echo the thoughts of Carrie Warner there with the importance of finding, what will be a difficult task of finding a replacement for Bev Oderkirk on the Board of Regents. And when you look at the regents that we have currently sitting, the representation for small rural school districts is critically important as we go through these resumes and questions today. So, we have a very diverse state here. Considering all of the things that regions do and are tasked with, there's going to be a lot of good questions. But for me, I had the honor to not only have Bev Oderkirk as all of our regent, but she was my constituent as well. And, the first time we sat down together right after I got elected to the assembly, she said, "I'll meet you at McDonald's." And we sat down and talked about state education policy, right there at McDonald's in Ogdensburg. And it was a meeting that I'll never forget. You would think someone, and if you've ever been in the state education building, it is beautiful. But Bev was so down to earth that she just wanted to have the, meeting right there at McDonald's. So a regent will never forget who served rural school districts very well. But I look forward to the interviews today. Thank you, chairs, for the opportunity.
Thank you,
Ben-
Mr. Walczyk.
Mr. Benedetto, I just
Yes.
want to make sure that Senator Comrie, who is a member of our committee, may want to say a few words. Senator Comrie, do you want to?
No, but
Okay.
I just want to thank all of the people that want to serve as regents today. I'm actually here to listen more than talk, but I want to thank all of the committee members for their diligence in making sure that this process, which is a rich tradition in our state, moves forward in a positive way. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Comrie.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, I guess we're ready for our first person to interview, Colleen McDonald. Can Miss McDonald be let into the room, please?
She is here.
Miss McDonald. Okay, unmute yourself. Very good. And let us see you. And we do see you. Okay, Miss McDonald, thank you very much for coming today and applying for the regents. Listen, what we have going here is it's an informal interview. Okay, so just relax and tell us your ideas. We would ask you to maybe give a 2 or 3 minute presentation of who you are and what you educationally believe and what your value might be to the Board of Regents. And after that, we'll open it up to the members of the Senate and the Assembly to ask questions of you. Okay? Anything else I should mention I left out? Thank you. So knowing that, Ms. McDonald, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Assembly members and senators, for taking your time this afternoon. I have spent my lifetime on the stage of public education, and as the Bard would say, one in time plays many parts. And oh, that is so true. I've been cast as a child, a student, a teacher, a parent, an advocate, a union officer, an administrator, an elected school board member, a statewide grant director, a professional development specialist, and as an advisor to statewide policy. And in these roles, they've offered me such a vast array of perspectives and allowed me a full working and behind the scenes understanding of the system. They've sharpened my ability to deconstruct and reassemble thinking in new, fresh ways. And as a result, I've built some collaborative partnerships to reimagine teacher preparation through Classroom Academy, fostered new thinking to address the teacher shortage through funding streams between agencies using apprenticeship monies, and helped teachers rehearse new roles that were written by the pandemic with professional development opportunities through the New York State Teacher Center system. This gallery view has cued the creative thinking needed to strategically consider the ever-evolving issues we currently face, such as social emotional health, broadening equity and access, the teacher shortage, graduation requirements, declining enrollment in higher education, just to name a few. Yet importantly, it's also provided me with the on-the-ground experience of operationalizing policies authored by others, the ability to deliver improvements and build connections that span systems as I continue to study my own practice and that of others always seeking to improve. To know me is to know some principles which guide my work. I believe our role as educator, as parent, or as policymaker is always grounded in the service of others. We must model what we seek: collaboration, vulnerability, trust, and patience, as well as the willingness to take risks, embrace change, continually grow, and experience discomfort. We must always assume presuppositions or presuppose the best of intentions from others. It's important to first listen to understand before we seek to be understood. And we need to be mindful. Our thinking must be so flexible and responsive as we are preparing students to overcome any barriers in their path, engage in an evolving world that we have not experienced, and prepare for jobs that have yet to be imagined. There is no system more essential to the successful performance of all other industries in New York State than education. And we have the unique structure of 17 regents tasked with delivering on that promise of a free and appropriate education for our children, as well as monitoring the other professions. This is an enormous task and responsibility, with the power to select the state's Commissioner of Education, set policy priorities, and support districts as they strive to deliver for their communities. It transcends each individual member and resides in the collective, yet it is the individual players' experiences, knowledge, and skills that create the whole that is greater than the sum of the parts. Should it be my honor to follow in the footsteps of esteemed Regent Oudekirk, I believe that my varied perspectives will offer unique strengths and qualities, which I hope to bring to the expanse of Judicial District 4 and contribute to this body as we prepare our charges, both professional and youth, for their own lifetime of changing roles and performances. It's my honor and my pleasure to answer any of your questions.
Ms. McDonald, thank you very much for that presentation. And I see that Ms. Glick would like to say a few words, and then followed by Shelley Mayer. Deborah?
You have a very broad set of experiences. Obviously, some of the early conversation that we've had internally has to do with the importance of rural schools, and obviously Cambridge is not in a large metropolis. So although we do love Battenkill books, so I'm wondering what you think the challenge is as we're coming out of the pandemic to assist students, be they in a rural school or elsewhere. What are the three most important things we're going to have to focus on to try to get kids up to speed and back on track? What do you think our challenges are?
Oh, we have many, but I think the most important ones are that we need to meet children where they're at coming out of the pandemic. And I think social emotional health, we are talking a lot about, and that's a very important factor because we all know that if children aren't feeling secure and grounded, they're not learning. And so we need to address those needs and bring them back into the community of school, a place where they can feel good about what they're doing. They can interact with their peers again in a very positive way. In talking with a lot of teachers, I work with a lot of teachers on professional development and through the residency program. And in speaking with them, what we heard a lot this year was they spent time, students spent time relearning the social pieces of being in school. And so those had to be addressed before they could actually then engage in the learning and the academics of being in school. And I think that's going to continue for some time. We've had kindergartners who came to school this year as first graders who had never been in school before. And so there's a lot to be doing. We really need to be considering the whole child. Again, I know we go back and forth and talk about different things, but we really need to know our students as whole students and what their circumstances are and what their background is and what they bring into the classroom, both as strengths and as challenges, so that we can best meet their needs.
Thank you. Senator Mayor.
Thank you, Ms. McDonald, for having such a well-prepared presentation. I'm very appreciative of that. You have experience with BOCES, and BOCES is one of these institutions that has strengths and weaknesses, in my opinion, in the educational framework. I wonder if you've given thought to, if you were on the Regents and you could make changes to the way BOCES works or is established, do you have specific suggestions on how to sort of build on the successes of BOCES and modernize, I guess, its approach or its operation to maximally serve kids?
Yeah, it's funny you asked me that. I actually started my teaching career as a special education teacher with the Dutchess County BOCES. And now, of course, I've kind of come full circle in my career as I work with the Washington, Warren, Saratoga, Hamilton, Essex County BOCES with the residency. One of the things that I was kind of percolating about during the pandemic was thinking about how BOCES could continue to serve districts in terms of like the remote piece, right? So as students come back into districts and their home schools, I still think there's an incredible space there for students who are either medically challenged or are incarcerated youth or youth that have mental health challenges that require out of district placements in the moment. We've opened a whole remote world that could really well serve students that maybe have not had as much access to high quality learning as all of our other students who grace our buildings every day. And so I think there's kind of an interesting, I'd love to think about and explore the possibility of BOCES addressing some of those needs, because it certainly could be a shared service, not just amongst districts, but I think there could be a space for almost a statewide platform to elevate the education of our students who can't come into our buildings.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Mr. Walczyk.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks for volunteering to do this job. We appreciate your service in education so far. Couple of questions. So the Board of Regents really has a large swath of responsibility, and let me just present a hypothetical. If a surgeon who was doing surgeries while drunk on the job appears before you in appeal, what things would you look for as a regent in order to reinstate their license? Or would you just say, if they've been drunk on the job doing surgeries, that's too much, they're not going to get a license to practice here in New York State?
It's an interesting question. I spent many years on the Professional Standards and Practices Board and had the responsibility of Part 83 cases and sitting on those cases. And I will say that my philosophy and approach to those cases is looking at a history, kind of looking at the long, not just the incident in isolation, but are we looking at a pattern of behavior? Are we looking at what's going on? Was it 20 years ago or was it last year? If it was 10 years ago, what's happened in that 10 years that the person has shown the ability to practice safely for the people of our state? I think there's a lot of things that have to be considered, and I don't believe that I'm not kind of for lack of a
No,
better.
you answered exactly what I was looking for about deliberating on these things and learning all the facts. I appreciate that answer.
Sure,
Kind of shifting gears.
sure.
How many genders are there?
That's not my decision. I believe that when we meet children in school or adults in the community, they define who they are. I don't define who they are.
How much time do you think our schools should spend on answering questions like that, as opposed to your core reading, writing, arithmetic type things?
I think that when questioned, I think that every child deserves to feel safe and seen in our buildings. And so if the question arises, I don't believe that we can pretend it wasn't asked. But I believe that everybody needs reassurance that they are seen and an important member of the community. And I think we can do that through our recognition, through our stance, and also through the reading and writing and the academics and the way that we approach those.
That's a good answer. Thank you. Should
let
schools
me-
in New York State consolidate?
Oh, that's a great question for a rural person. There's, that's a long range question, because we have to honor and recognize that people's identity is often anchored in their school in the rural community, because it's usually the largest employer. It usually is where everybody goes. It's the community center. And so tackling that issue is, we don't always make decisions that are in our best fiscal interest, for example. And so we have to factor in things like identity and how do we move people with us. If we want to go down that road, it's going to have to be, we're going to have to take the time and have the patience to do it well, so it's not a constant fight after the fact.
Thank you
Thank you. I
very
think
much.
the
I'm
chairs.
just going to mention to my members, please, there's limited amount of time and too many people, so try to be minimalistic in your questions you ask. Carrie Werner, please.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Colleen, for your presentation and for your willingness to serve. I really just have one question. We are seeing increasing numbers of retirements among our teacher ranks, and fewer young people choosing to enter the profession of teaching. So I know this is an area that you've worked in. What are some of the solutions that you think that SED and the Board of Regents can pursue to better support the profession of education and recruit and retain qualified, exceptional teachers in our K through 12 schools?
Thank you for a great question. So I believe that in order to recruit and retain high quality teachers into our profession, we need to really work on how we best prepare them for that profession. And we need to prepare them in a way that is I personally believe more than the 8 or 16 weeks of student teaching. That's why we've developed the residency model that we have, and we fashioned it after a medical residency, because the reality is that teachers make very complex and over thousands of decisions a day that impact children's lives. And so they need to really understand it. One of the main reasons for leaving the profession is people feel underprepared, and it's a very complex job. And so we need to recognize that. And by setting that, as I said in my opening statement, we need to model what we seek. And so if we want teachers to come into the profession, we need to open avenues so that career changers can come into the profession, so that substitute teachers who are not certified as teachers but sub every day, if they want to come into the profession, we need to provide access for them. We need to reach across agencies and look at this really as a workforce development model, because that's what we need to do. We need to develop our educator workforce, and then we need to provide them opportunities and growth so that they can remain in the classroom, but still maybe access teacher leadership roles and impact other professionals coming into the profession, and not just be narrowly limited.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Mr. Chairman?
Thank you. Mr. Smith.
Thank you so much. And thank you for joining us today and answering our questions.
Sure.
I like a lot of what you said, so I don't want to repeat a lot of my questions, but what you just touched on, I think, is so critical, that we want to encourage more people to enter the profession, particularly as a second career. I think that adds so much value. Now, two questions. Yesterday, we saw one of probably the most contentious school board elections statewide that we've ever seen. I know I represent suburban Long Island. Almost every single school district was a battleground for ideology and all these thoughts. But one thing I think was a root theme: parental involvement. So now, as someone who worked in BOCES, it's very important when you have your children not only pursuing that academic success, but also a success in a future career. How can you as a regent encourage parents to be more engaged to ensure success for those students?
So I taught high school and middle school as well as elementary school. And as anyone will tell you, there's a tremendous difference in natural parental involvement as you travel up the system. And so I felt my job as a middle school and high school teacher was to engage my parents. And I found the way to do that, actually, as I pursued the national board process, was through really establishing two-way communication. And that meant listening. Those parents knew their children better than I knew their children, and they could provide me with such insight and understanding if I was willing to reach out and if I was willing to listen. And we really became a team in approaching student issues and the issues with their child, because I believed with positive presuppositions, they have the best of intentions. Everybody parents differently. I might not agree with all the decisions you make as a parent, but I have to respect the fact that those are your decisions and you believe they're the best decisions for your child, and you're doing the best that you can with what you have. And so once we established kind of that framework, we worked with parents to be heard and we listened. And I think that even, take that experience even to a statewide level, it's the listening piece that matters. And it's the fact that people like to be heard and feel that they're being seen.
Absolutely. And I think I was a former teacher, and one thing that we'd always say is, look, God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. You should be doing twice as much listening. So I'm going to end. I have one last question.
Sure.
That's a burning one for me. And I believe all of us to some degree want to see more involvement in the career-based education. Do you think, and do you have any ideas, have you spent any time over your career thinking about how we can rebrand BOCES? Obviously BOCES, Board of Cooperative Educational Services, there's a certain maybe stigma or thought process of what that means. Can we, maybe a polytechnic high school or some way throughout the state where we can really show people that they can do both? You can get a Regents diploma and participate in BOCES. Or
I can speak to our Wish We BOCES right now, and I believe other BOCES around the state are doing it. I think they're making gains in that regard. You look at the P-TECH high schools, which in our region are run through the BOCES. You look at the New Visions program that our BOCES has, which is our top high school students, our valedictorians and salutatorians are competing for spaces in New Visions to go into engineering, to go into nursing, those types of things. And so I really think, just like with other workforce development platforms, I think we need to look at the spectrum of careers that we can offer students, actual experiential pieces, because BOCES is wonderful at providing those experiential aspects of a career. And so what other careers can we help access that?
Okay, thank you. Pleasure to have you here this afternoon.
Thank you.
Unmute. I think we have Senator Stavisky next.
Thank you.
Yes, to close, I said Senator Stavisky. Sorry.
Thank you. Incidentally, I appreciate your last answer, because many, many years ago, I taught at a vocational and technical high school in New York City, and I couldn't agree more. I have two quick questions. In your submission to us, you said you were an educator, a thinker, and a change agent. And I'm wondering, aside from BOCES, what changes would you like to see in general terms? And the second part of my question concerns your resume, because it's very, very, I was going to say eclectic, very varied. What has been the most challenging or satisfying part of your career?
Wow. Those are great questions. Thank you very much. I think that as a change agent, I will say that it's presented many challenges, because I happen to like change and embrace change, and I tend to be in the minority often in that regard. You have to kind of prepare the ground for change. I've learned sometimes the hard way, and to make those changes and to have those changes stick. We've been working on, one of the changes that I think has been instrumental is, as we think about really professionalizing teaching, part of that goes to preparation. Part of that goes to continued growth, and teachers are in the role of teaching. So I think most changes are very multifaceted, and there needs to be multi-prongs to the approach. In terms of the most rewarding part of my career, I actually, it's hard to kind of pinpoint. I feel that working on the systems level with our BOCES and our school districts, our rural districts in this area, to address the teacher shortage and getting the grant funding to create and to originally implement the Classroom Academy as a residency model with our higher ed partner, and then bringing on, breaking the mold and actually spanning higher education partners, and working with the regents at the time to develop the certificate so that we could employ our residents. It's just kind of been a really rewarding, although extremely challenging, series of developments and movements. And, sometimes it's one step forward and two steps back. But just kind of that persistence and willingness to stick with it until we see this through to hopefully a wonderful end, as we actually steer the cruise ship in that regard towards a real professionalization of education.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McDonald. We appreciate that you have applied and was patient enough to answer our questions. We thank you for your time, and we will be in touch one way or the other very soon on this. So go have a good day, and thank you for all your fine answers.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate all of your time and energy filling this really difficult role to fill, given Beverly's service to the region. So thank you.
Have a good day. Okay, fellows, our next person to be interviewed is Mr. Benny Goldstein. Is Mr. Goldstein around?
We are bringing him in right now.
Okay. I can see Mr. Goldstein. He's walking down the hall. He's about to come on in the office and be interviewed. Take your time, Mr. Goldstein. We don't want you out of breath when you get here.
We've all had technical problems at one time or another.
Okay, I'm making fun.
We've had some surprises in the past in person.
Isn't that the truth?
He is in the room, just working to get him on screen.
Okay, Ashley, thank you.
You're welcome.
Benny Goldstein, unmute yourself and put on your video.
Yeah.
How
Okay.
are you, sir?
I'm doing great. Thank you.
Mr. Goldstein, I am Mike Benedetto. I'm chairman of the Assembly Education Committee, and I'm with many of my colleagues who are here to interview you for the regions. Listen, what we're going to have is really just an informal conversation. We want you to relax and just do a nice presentation to us. Brevity is always appreciated, but brevity and to the point. Please give us a bit of an introduction for yourself, maybe 2 or 3 minutes, and then we'll follow up with what might be many questions. Okay.
Perfect.
So the floor is yours, Mr. Goldstein.
Thank you, Chair. I would like first to thank Robert Smullen for introducing me and bringing me in front of you, everyone. Thank you, Robert. My name is Benny Goldstein. I am 45 years old. I live in the town of Canajoharie. I am currently the town supervisor here. I am happily married. I have 6 children, 6 boys, 5 of which are in the school system today. So I hear a lot about what's going on, and I'm very involved. I grew up in Israel most of my life. I have most of my life I was in the world of education. I would call myself an entrepreneur educator. I have a law degree, and I kept on going and have today a master's degree in law as well. I specialized in patent law and international contracts. I spent many of my life learning also Judaical studies. I'm a rabbi and I'm a scribe, to write like Torahs and stuff like that. So I have a very strong Jewish upbringing. I would like to show you really quickly about my family. This is my older son. He's serving in the military in Israel. This is my other son. He is 17 and he just joined the fire department here in Canajoharie. So he's very excited, and the school system is supporting him in that. So all my kids love, giving their time and everything. My other son is 15. He became a chef. He loves cooking. There's a reason why I'm bringing this up, okay? I'm not just talking. Recently, I introduced him to something that's called a HelloFresh meal. You buy these meals, And as you can see, you put the meal together and it's very easy. And he makes these amazing meals and he loves cooking. So actually there was a sad story. A few days ago, a girl came to him and she stopped eating for 3 days and she was crying to him. She says, I want to be skinny like all the other girls. And he spoke to her and he talked to her and he says, that's not the way. I'll help you eat healthier. I'm a cook. I'm doing things. So all my kids are involved with what's going on in the school system. And I must say the school system is a wonderful place. I meet so many happy children and educators, and we're doing such a good job. And I just want to, put my 2 cents in and be a facilitator between what's going on in the school system today and help with my expertise. One of the things that's important to me, I made a list. Hold on. Here we go. Of five things that are important for me to change in the school system or to add. My motto is to prepare children for life. And I feel the school system is lacking in that in a little bit, where I have such a rich upbringing. And I would like the kids to learn Photoshop, Excel spreadsheets, real estate. There's so many things, even cooking. I want them to learn a variety of things, and it's missing. The next thing is long school days and after school activities. That is so important. I was raised in finishing school at 5 o'clock. I'm a board game inventor. I want to show you something really cool. I invented medieval letters, teaches kids how to read. I invented blasting boxes, teaching kids how to count and multiplication. I invented this other board game called Zabirius. It teaches kids also how to count and read stories. And finally, there's another board game that I developed called Math Night. It's coming out. It's a 3rd edition. I sold over 10,000 of these. It teaches kids how to count, teaches kids interaction. And I believe in doing social, having classes, bringing social into the classes today more and more, and all these good things. I don't want to go too much into depth. And I believe in better eating. It is so important to teach the kids about eating healthy. And that's why my son, teaches. I'll show you a cute picture. My son taught the neighbor, how to make French toast. He's seventh grade. He doesn't know how to make French toast. And he was so excited and he was teaching him. And I believe, we can do more and have a rich, excitement in school. And I want school to have after activities where kids will say to their parents, hey, let's go to school and hang out. That's what I want. And I want to use the facilities that the school is adding. Second of all, more vocational learning. It is so important to give more of a variety of classes of so many. I had a rich upbringing in so many ways. I want to show you another cool invention of mine. I spent 5 years of my life. I raised $500,000 in making this program. It's called Introduction to the Talmud through animations, through cartoons. I have dozens and dozens of cartoons where you learn and you educate, and the only homework you have is to go home and watch these few minutes of animation, which is fun. And this is studied all around the world, my educational program. I wrote books. I'm almost finished, don't worry. I wrote books about marriage, really nice books about children books, about imagination and stuff like that. I have playground imagination. There's so much you want to train the kids about imagination and learn to be creative and being inventive. It is so important. I'm an artist also. I drew pictures and I've done so much. And teaching a variety of things to kids, we're lacking in that. And that's, if I could help in that field and give more to the children today's age and prepare them for life, I would be so happy. And what else? I believe in academic rigor. Let's excel. Let's not be average. Today, the kids are capable of so much more. And I really believe, if you light the flame in a child and you speak, and I would love to go from school to school and talk about this. I've spoken in schools about I'm a patent attorney, and in Israel right now, startup companies are really big, and you want to train the kids to think on their own and think. I want the next generation of kids, to send rockets to Mars to cure cancer and all that good stuff. And that's what I'm here for. So again, I don't have 30 years of being a principal under my belt. I don't have all that other stuff, but I'm good-hearted. I really feel that, the system I can improve on and make changes and be a conduit between what's happening in the school and with the teachers and present it to you. I'm a team player, and that's what it's about. So here you go. That's my spiel.
That's a pretty good spiel, and I want to thank you very much, Mr. Goldstein. And to tell you the absolute truth, I've been doing this for a number of years, and this is the first time we've had visual presentations like you have displayed. And thank you for that little change.
Thank you.
There are a few questions out there, and we'll start with Mr. Smith.
So welcome. It's so good to have you here. And I want to first thank you for your enthusiasm. I think my colleagues a lot of times make fun of me because I always somehow spin something into being something positive, but I love your enthusiasm. I love your enthusiasm. And I always joke that this reminds me of Shark Tank a little bit, actually, when we do I always say that. But all seriousness, what are your thoughts? Because as someone who is not an educator, and by the way, that's not technically a criteria for the Board of Regents, what do you think you bring outside of this? Now we handle, the Board of Regents also handles, they work with licensing of professions. They work with, again, educating non-public and public schools across, students across the state. So you just said something that I found interesting, that as someone who does not have that traditional background, what do you think you bring to the table that's different that could maybe spice it up and add to it? I think that's...
Well, my whole presentation speaks for itself, obviously, but I'm an ear. I'm willing to listen. I go to school. This morning, I went to one of my kids' meetings, and I sat with the teachers and the principals, and I asked them, what is missing? And something as simple as that, people forget to do. And I'm a people's person, and I want to reach out, and just bringing everyone collectively and bringing that in front of the board and telling you guys, hey, what's missing? Look, even that would be something.
No, I think that's great. And my last question, and it's tough to sum it up in a short time, and you actually did a pretty good job, but what other elements do you think for your educational philosophy? And it doesn't have to be formalized, but I think all of us, to some degree, have just a philosophy of what we think that public school or school in general should bring to students, and that'll be my final question.
Well, that's a really good question. I believe actually it was the number one, higher education earlier. I believe we're wasting too much time babysitting the children, and they're capable for much more. I believe in like the SATs and the GEDs, we should try to do it a little earlier, and then have the kids the possibility to do more micro classes, lots of micro classes. There's so many subjects out there that we're lacking on giving the kids the tools to do when they go out into the real world. And that's what I would like to focus on.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for joining us. We really do.
Thank you, Doug.
Thank you. Mr. Walczyk.
First of all, Mr. Goldstein, the energy is incredible and a breath of fresh air. So thank you for bringing that to us today. I saw the dad's office sign behind you.
Oh yeah.
And appreciate the proud father moments that you shared with us. I think that really made it personal. At least it did for me. On that line, parents or teachers have talked about how they really have replaced parents in a lot of ways in our classrooms. And they are doing a lot of the things that parents used to do as far as discipline and upbringing and that sort of thing. And I wondered as a proud father of, did you say 6 boys?
Yep, 6 boys. I
Wow.
have 6 boys. That's a really good question. I believe in positive motivation, of course, and spending quality time with the kids. Here's an example. Here's another son of mine, the younger one. I do Lego with him. Every weekend we sit down, I buy a Lego, and his motor skills has improved tremendously. And my other son, I go to the game store with him, and I play board games, and he has social interaction. And spending quality time with your own children can excel the smartness, and you can tell when a kid is raised well at home. They don't curse, they're respectful, and they smile, and that's what you want. You know, the education is beyond the school, it starts at home. And if I could, help that in any way, I'm here.
Thank you, and thanks for volunteering.
Thank you, Mark.
I want to recognize the presence of Assemblyman Gandolfo, who has joined us today. Ms. Werner, you have a question.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Chairman. And thank you very much, Mr. Goldstein, for your enthusiasm. I'm going to ask you the same question that I'm going to ask each of the candidates. Many of our schools are looking at increasing teacher retirements and having challenges recruiting young people, career changers into the profession of teaching. So what is your perspective on how State Education Department and the Board of Regents can better support the profession of teaching and grow quality teachers into the mix?
That is a great question. I had that discussion with the school today, actually this morning. I was with them on this. We need to lower the certifications that's required for a teacher to be in the school. If it's like second education and stuff like that, it's too rigorous. And they're having difficulty today recruiting people. Thank God in a lot of schools, they're lucky and they find people. Sadly, a lot of people don't want to work. But on a whole, people in the school system are the role models for our future of the next generation. And believe it or not, there are so many wonderful people out there, and the school system has that. I believe in earlier retirement, helping the teachers. The teachers should be recognized, and they're not. They should be paid even more if I could, possibly. There's no better person that I would want to support more than the person that I give them my own child to teach. And I'm for all that good stuff. Bring more people on, bring younger people, entice them in any way possible. Maybe the government can give them special credits. I don't know. Whatever is needed. We need the young people involved.
Thank you very much,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you. And seeing no more questions, Mr. Goldstein, I'll just tell you, thank you very much for a very enthusiastic and energetic and visually interesting presentation. We will be in touch with you shortly, but again, thank you for your time today.
Thank you,
And have a
everyone,
good
for
day.
your time. I appreciate it. Bye-bye. Okay.
Okay, 2 down, 4 to go, and the 5 to go. And the next person up is Miss Maxine Bridgeport. Could she please be brought into the room?
We are in the process of that right now.
I know, you said that for Mr. Goldstein. It took us forever to get to you.
I do apologize. They have to switch between the waiting room and this room.
How far away is this waiting room? I mean, how long does it take to walk down this hall? Aren't we all on computers here? I'm sorry, I'm just ranting over here. Don't pay any attention to me.
Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain.
She is here and being brought in as we speak. And she has disappeared. 1 minute,
Disappeared.
please.
She is in the Netherlands. Bridgeport, isn't that the name the same name as a senator in our chamber, the upper chamber, the state legislature.
Bridgeport.
Bridgeport. Yeah, one of my favorites, by the way. Yeah.
Taking umbrage with that. I don't know why.
He's a very good colleague of ours.
Yes, yes. Miss Bridgeport.
Hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, and we welcome you here. I'm Assemblyman Mike Benedetto. I'm chairman of the Assembly Education Committee, and I'm joined with my colleagues both in the Assembly and in the Senate. What we have here really is an informal interview process, and we want you to relax and just answer nice and casual like. You please give us kind of an introduction, an overview of yourself and who you are and maybe your philosophy, and take 2 or 3 minutes to do that. Following which we'll ask you a multitude of questions. Okay, so the floor is yours. Go right ahead.
Well, good afternoon again, everyone, and thank you to the chairs of the Assembly and Senate Education Committee, and thanks to all members of the Higher Education Committee and everyone in attendance for inviting me to participate in this process. So I was told to just mention some of my interests. So my interest in New York State public education, of course, stems from my daily employment as a soon-to-be retired school psychologist. In my role as a school psychologist, my interests, of course, focus on the social and emotional needs of students, and students with unique and varying learning styles, as well as students with significant learning delays and deficits. As a district-wide family and community engagement coordinator, my interest is promoting family and community participation in our schools, as well as developing and maintaining home, school, and community relationships. As a school district employee and a colleague to teachers and staff, my interests focus on the challenges and frustration that teachers face in and out of the classroom. As a proud parent of graduates from a local school district and a proud parent of a SUNY graduate and a former school board member, I have an unwavering interest in preserving the strong and dynamic public education system within our state. I'm here today because I truly believe that education is an investment in human capital. I believe that the most important producer of human capital within New York State is the public education system. Through education, we develop literacy, the ability to numerate, and the skills to problem solve. Through education, we also achieve self-actualization, economic efficiency, civic responsibility, and satisfactory human relationships. In order to do this, our public schools need resources in the form of money, time, and people. As our schools face a battery of challenges today, there's one resource that is troubling: the shortage of people in the form of teachers, counselors, nurses, teacher assistants, substitute teachers, bus drivers, and the list goes on. If I'm fortunate to become a member of the region, an additional interest will be to work with state and district leaders to combat the growing teacher and staff shortages in all of our school districts. Thank you. That is why I'm here today.
Ms. Bridgeport, thank you very much. And let me just tell you, we certainly appreciate your conciseness and to the point presentation just there.
Thank you.
There are several questions, and we'll begin with Mr. Walchett.
Thank you, Chair. The Twitter handle at @mbrizport, Maxine Bridgeport, Schenectady, New York. Is that yours?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Should we pick a regent of our selection today? Should this panel be considering regents who bring people closer together?
Yes, we should. We should.
So 4 days ago, you retweeted this tweet from Andrew Goss. As a veteran, I used to cherish the moments I passed a neighborhood flying American flags. Now I just think to myself that it must be a Trump supporter who supports fascism. How does that bring people closer together, sharing those types of messages?
Well, I can understand your concern, and I just, feel that we're sometimes losing what brings, like you said, what brings us together. And I remember in the past when I used to see the American flag, I only had good feelings, and unfortunately, because of some of the things that we see in society right now, the American flag doesn't always represent that good feeling. And I don't want to get into politics in terms of the January 6th event, but we saw that the flag, the American flag, which was so sacred and should be so sacred, was used in such negative ways. And that really bothered me, that we use the flag in that way. And I just cannot understand how we could take something that is supposed to be so sacred and so cherished and stand for all that is good about humanity. In my opinion, it just unfortunately has become this symbol sometimes in many places of being a way to divide our country. And maybe I should not have tweeted that, but I saw that, and that's how, unfortunately, the flag has become a symbol of not cohesiveness, but divisiveness, unfortunately.
Do you believe children in public schools should stand and pledge allegiance to the flag at the beginning of the school day?
Yes, of course. And I do that every morning. And if I'm walking in the hallway and the pledge comes on, I stop and I encourage the young students that I work with. And, just yesterday I corrected someone from putting their hand over their heart. And yes, I do believe that.
Thank you, Assemblyman. And we'll go to, I just want to recognize the appearance of Assemblyman Phil Steck to today's meeting. Assemblyman Gandolfo.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Ms. Brisport, for being here today. Are you the same Maxine Brisport that was a member of the Schenectady County Action Program?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, because I found an article dated October 23rd, 2020, where you said that academic curriculums need to be revised to start teaching about inequality, bias, privilege, and social justice at a younger age. I just wanted to know, what age do you think that is, and what does that curriculum look like?
So, in terms of equity, diversity, inclusion, and so on, we should start talking about those things, I think, when at an elementary level, in the sense that it comes in different, you use different terminology and different vocabulary, but it depends on what group age you're talking to. Sharing and treating each other nicely, that's a part of it. I mean, we have children who are coming in kindergarten, and I won't sit here and because of confidentiality, but the same are coming with things from home that needs to be corrected in school. And when I say corrected, if they're saying, I cannot play with you because you are this type of person and you behave in such a way, we need to say, no, we need to treat everyone equally, and we need to talk about those things. That children are coming in. We sometimes think education is only in the school system. Many times, by the time we get children, they're being educated in about a lot of different things. And I'm not discounting the parents' education, but there has to be ways, as I mentioned, about becoming, a civic-minded and civic responsibility. We need to do what we can to encourage our students to grow up to be well-rounded individuals who treat each other well.
Well, and I definitely agree that children have to learn how to treat each other well, which is why I'm a little disturbed by a couple of the tweets in your Twitter feed. One, you retweeted Anna Navarro, who said that Trump's children are genetically incapable of having a soul. So I don't see how that jives with treating people with respect and kindness if you're saying one of your political opponents, their children don't have souls. I just don't understand how that fits in. Does that fit into an academic curriculum? Or your tweet where you said being white isn't just a privilege, it's a superpower? Would that fit into this inequality curriculum?
Well, none of those things have anything to do with what I do on a daily basis in school. Has nothing to do with an academic curriculum. None of those things are being taught in the school.
Okay, well, you're up for a position of regent, so I just wanted to get your thoughts and your philosophy that you might bring to the table. And quite frankly, I'm a little disturbed by many of these tweets. Also, another where you said if Republicans opposed the confirmation of our latest Supreme Court justice, that they were racists.
Did I tweet that?
You retweeted it saying that Republicans opposed Ketanji Brown Jackson because she was Black, which that's an implication of racism to me.
Well, I do apologize if I retweeted that, but there were many things that they said in that, and I don't want to recap all they said in the Supreme Court hearing, but I think we're all adults here and we can realize what some of the motivation was behind all of the things, the questions they asked.
Okay.
Thank you, Assemblyman Gandolfo. Senator Mayer.
Ms. Brisboard, thank you very much for being here. Question for you as someone who deals with children's IEPs. One of the challenges that the regions face statewide is the challenge of students with IEPs and whether as a system, we are doing all the right things to give them the tools to succeed over the course of their time in school. So I wondered, outside of your own personal experience, a little bit broader, what you think about what the state and the Board of Regents can do better to deal with students with disabilities or challenges structurally. Are there things that we're missing?
Well, a lot more early intervention. And I really do believe that we need to, when I say early, I mean really early, we know that as a school employee, I know many families who are already struggling. And I think that we need to work with our local hospitals from the moment children are born. And I'm not saying that we need to become their initial caretaker, but we already know there are families that are struggling. And I think we need to employ more social workers in the hospitals to work in our maternity unit, to just go in and interview that parent. Do you have the support once you're out of the hospital? Do you need any additional help? And so on, and then start and set them up right away with early intervention. And I think we'll see some of the things that create certain learning difficulties or even if the child is born with a disability, we can start taking care of it since birth. I know Boston as a system, it's called Boston First, that they go in and start working with families and just simple things such as teaching a parent how to read to their infant and just, start talking about fine motor skills, gross motor skills, those kind of things from early infancy. But I think we need to work more with our families from the birthing room all the way, not just from when they're age 2 or 3, but from the birthing room. I think we need to start there. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Assemblymember Werner.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Ms. Brisboard, for joining us today and for your interest in this role. I have 2 questions for you. And the first is, your experience is very focused, it seems to come out of city school districts. And the 4th Judicial District has a high concentration of rural schools. And I'm wondering if you might spend a moment or two to reflect on what your observations are about the differences between city schools and rural schools from a policy perspective.
So of course, I researched the entire North Country and all the 11 different counties that make up, this vacancy. And one of the things that we sometimes forget is that rural schools and city schools, they have many things in common. One of the things is a certain level of poverty, and that cuts across, and I'm not saying all the districts are, but just like, so one of the things that I've always talked about in, student achievement, if we address socioeconomic needs, I think we will see change as we talk about the achievement gap and the expectation gap. So I think that's one of the first things that I would be focused on is working with the socioeconomic needs in some of our more rural areas. And I think that is a major concern. Poverty creates a lot of academic adverse academic outcomes. And I think that's one of the things that I noticed that would be a driving force in what I do. Of course, the school districts, many are smaller, the communities are smaller and spread out. Transportation issue can be a problem in terms of busing, and there's also the teacher shortage in terms of finding specific teachers in math, sciences, and those kind of unique areas. So there's a lot of similarities, but the differences are there also, and I would not discount the differences. But I think once we work in many of the same things that ails all school district, you know, that is the way I would go about working with the vast area of the North Country school districts.
Thank you. And I want to follow up on something you just said, but you also mentioned it in your opening remarks, and that is that you're recognizing, as I do, that we have a lot of retirements among our teachers and a lot of challenges recruiting new teachers. So I'm wondering if you could, with some level of specificity, identify what are some of the ways that, in your mind, the State Education Department and the Board of Regents could better support the profession of teaching and bring more quality educators into the profession?
So one of the things that one of the reasons I believe that we're losing many people from going into, students from becoming interested in the field of education, is that we don't promote it. We work in the schools, but we don't promote our profession. We don't talk to children about becoming teachers. I mean, I'm at the elementary level and I try to encourage it. I think we need to start to grow our own by talking to our high school and middle school students, talking to students at the community college level who are like undecided, and recognizing students who show the aptitude and the potential. It's so funny. I've always said that we work in the profession and we don't promote it. And I think that's one of the big disconnect that we're seeing. And many children, students in high school who know they want to go on to higher ed and may not know what they want to do. I think maybe we should start just, promoting our profession that way. And I say profession, all aspects of the education role.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Stavisky.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to shift gears a bit. You served or continue to serve as a school psychologist.
Yes, I am.
The Regents deal not just with pre-K to 12, but the higher education areas as well. Not only the colleges and universities, but as Assemblymember Benedetto said at the very beginning, the 55 professions that are licensed by the State Education Department. And psychologists is one of them.
Right.
Have you been following, I don't mean to blindside you.
Yeah.
But have you been following the issues involving scope of practice with the psychology profession or licensure, et cetera?
Not to an extensive degree, but I am aware of some of the issues. And as a school psychologist, my license is to work in schools. I do not work as a psychologist outside of the school system.
Okay. One of the, I think, most underserved constituency in higher education are college students, both in the independent and the public colleges, in terms of mental health issues. How would you address, I know this is not in your area, but do you have any thoughts on how we can improve serious issues that are developing in college age students as a result of the pandemic?
Well, again, there's a significant shortage across the entire nation, and definitely New York State, in providing mental health support for our students. I think maybe we could identify peer tutors. We have many college students who may be going into the field of psychology or counseling or mental health. Maybe we could use those students to provide, again, there would be confidentiality and all of those things, but that could be part of their training internship to help address their to help their fellow students in terms of addressing their mental health needs.
Thank you. We do that with a pilot project based, I believe, at Upstate Medical School in Syracuse, where they have students in a group therapy type setting. But thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Mr. Phil Steck.
I think he's muted.
Phil, unmute yourself.
Sorry about that. So I just wanted to say thank you for your service to the Troy School District. I have a staff member who had 3 children in that district and can't speak more highly of anyone than yourself and your ability to work with all different kinds of people. And in fact, my staffer and her family are all white. So this is not about any kind of critical race theory or anything of that nature. So if you could expound a little bit on why you think teaching more about diversity, equity, and inclusion is good for students of all different backgrounds.
I think it just helps us develop a better understanding of each other. That's basically all it boils down to. Develop an understanding that we're all humans who are hoping to achieve at the highest potential of our own given ability. That is basically what it is. You know, when I work on the equity committee in the Troy School District, and I do that because I wanted to ensure that all students, regardless of ability, it's not just about race, as unfortunately, it's not just about, skin color or where you're from, nationality. I focus it also on ability. And so I, as a school psychologist who work with students who are having some different learning style and learning deficit, I also work with our students without difficulties I do some peer mentoring. We do an after school mentoring group so that our students who are struggling can work with others who aren't, and they learn from each other. And I think it's just about learning about all of the strengths that we bring and the differences that we have, and just encourage everyone to work as a unit and to help each other work to our full potential. And that's the goal.
Thank you.
Thank you. And to close, Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you, Ms. Brisport, for joining us. I was very excited when I saw your resume because I strongly believe that we need more school psychologists. I would actually support putting mental health professionals in every building if we could. I know there's budgetary constraints, but your expertise in this. But now, as we're talking about this, I take a look at your Twitter feed and some public comments, and I'm a little bit horrified. I'm not going to lie. I'm looking at your resume. It talks about empathy and excellent listening skills. You're on the district-wide equity committee. But now I'm looking at public statements, and it looks like there's over 15,800 tweets, it says. And it's one after another bashing Republicans. And, one thing that I find shocking. Now, I'll tell you, I would not support putting someone on the Board of Regents that denied that Joe Biden won the election in 2020. I think that that's just not accurate. But I see tweets here that are referencing that the former president stole the election in 2016, references to this. I'm at a loss here because I think that when we have a state of New York where we are a very diverse state with different opinions, ones we agree with, ones we don't agree with, I think that this is very problematic. And I know that in school districts, you started working in the school district of Troy in 1997. If someone were to apply, I know districts check their social media. And I know you've apologized twice. I mean, how can we, I guess my question, because I'm really here to ask a question. we really want to bring people together. Yesterday, as you know, we had one of the most divisive school board elections in the state where parents are very concerned about the future of education of their children. How can we bring people together and not be divisive? Because here it says you're a school psychologist and community activist on Twitter. What percentage school psychologist, what percentage community activist?
Well, thank you for your question. And I do understand your concern, and maybe, maybe tweeting some of those things were poor judgment. I'm a school psychologist. I love being a school psychologist. I function as a school psychologist. I've not had any complaints. I think I do my job quite well. And once I'm sitting in my living room and I'm not typing my reports, I'm not a school psychologist, I guess. And I watch the news. I am a human being. I think I get.
And I'm sorry. I don't mean to put you on the spot.
No. I'm just
entitled to the same freedom.
I'm just answering. As someone who was not aspiring to other offices or things like that, I probably maybe I would have maybe not tweeted those things, but I am who I am, and I believe that there are certain things in our society that is eroding the trust that we had, and I'm just going to be very honest. I'm not going to try to sit here and pretend I'm not who I am. I really, and I'm just going to say that, believe that there are certain things going on in our democracy that's just not what I enjoy seeing on a daily basis. And I mentioned that before, and I guess my only outlet was finding ways of, and we have this social media outlet, I guess.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to attack you in that way. No, and I fully appreciate that. And I don't disagree with you on a lot of what you just said, by the way.
I just want to say one last thing. I do not think you're attacking me. And I just want to say, if I were maybe being a conniving person who was sitting and saying, I want to do X, Y, and Z, so I'm not going to share my personal opinion about stuff, then maybe I wouldn't. I love the field of education. I believe in the kids in New York State. I believe in the teachers in New York State. If I don't participate in the Regents process, I will still be participating in other parts of the New York State.
And I'll end and I appreciate your thoughts on it. It just puts all of us in a bad spot if we have to take a vote on a Regent member, and then it could be construed that our endorsement of you would be an endorsement of what you're saying.
I
appreciate that, Ms. Brisboard, and thank you for joining us during this. And I
apologize to anyone that I said anything that.
We fully understand.
No, we understand. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Good. Lastly, Ms. Glick.
Thank you very much. We probably retweeted some of the same things. So let me just ask you about the notion that we are moving. A lot of people are saying that the world of work is never going to be what it was before, that there's always going to be sort of a hybrid, particularly for young people, that they'll be living in a world where the world of work is going to be only part of the time in person and part of the time on screen. And I'm just wondering, from the point of view of a school psychologist, and what's important about personal interactions, what you think about that, and what you think about is it a positive that kids have learned these skills, or do you think that entirely too much time is spent on screen, whether it's doing studying or doing video games or whatever? What do you think about the difference between virtual interactions and personal interactions?
So, like everything, we need moderation. And there are some students who are capable of handling the volume of time they spent when we were all virtual, and they were okay with it. And again, it's not just, the student is sitting behind a screen and they'll be fine. There's a myriad of things that helps. Family support, other activities that they can do. So we have to look at the whole child. We have to look at the temperament of the child. And again, like I said, all the other resources that they have to help them develop into, a well-functioning student. So we had many students that were fine and they came back and they just picked right up and went on. Others, we struggled to get back into a groove. We are still struggling with some to get back into the flow of learning. So we have thousands of students, millions in the state. We can't look at each one individually, but as a school, what I know we did as the Troy School District, and specifically in my school, we had an idea of students and families that may struggle or would struggle. And so we put some extra support into those families and ensure that those students were doing well. So in terms of, I think we're moving forward towards where there will be more virtual learning, but we have to know our students and know our families and decide which students it's best suited for. If that's, I hope that kind of answers your question.
Ms. Bridgeport, I think it does. And I thank you very much for your answers today, your patience today in answering those questions and being here to take those questions. We will certainly get back to you in rather short time, I'm sure. And again, thank you and go have a good day, Miss Bridgeport.
Well, thank you for this experience, and I actually learned some things about myself. Thank you. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. We move on to the next person who has applied for District 4 Regent, and that is Dr. Susan Friedman. Susan Friedman, is she here?
Yes. Good
She is.
afternoon.
Oh, and she is. I'm so sorry, Ms. Friedman, I didn't see. And we welcome you here to the interview process. I am Assemblyman Benedetto. I am chairman of the Assembly Education Committee. I'm here with my colleagues, both in the Assembly and the State Senate. And we're here for, this is an informal interview process. Okay, we want you to be relaxed, and we want you to do a short presentation about yourself, maybe your philosophy and why you want to be a regent and what you can add to that. And 2 or 3 minutes, whatever that might be. And after that, you will open the floor for questions from our panel. Okay, with that, I'll shut up and let you go, Ms. Friedman. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Chairman Benedetto, Chairman Meyer, and the Committee of Education of the Assembly and Senate. I did prepare remarks. I'll leave some things out. I hope that you had gotten my education beforehand. And I'm just going to start in because I thought that it's best to get to the issues so that then you can question me. So thank you today for inviting me to talk. The problems facing us in the state and the nation today surrounding K through 12 and higher education seem almost daunting. The front page of today's New York Times features an article with the headline, "Public schools have lost over 1 million students in 2 years." But what really caught my attention was the first sentence, which said that 50,000 children or students have been lost to the public school system in New York City over the last 2 years. We know that enrollment at higher education institutions, with the exception of the elite institutions, is down. In a recent poll, student respondents said that the greatest barrier to them was cost, to higher education, to seeking higher education was cost. And knowing this, knowing that low-income students face real hurdles in seeking higher education and post-vocational training speaks to us about how we can really provide equity to the system when there are barriers like this. So we have the classroom teacher shortages. There are ways that we can look, how are we going to address them in the short term? and in the long term. And from some schools in rural districts, I understand that those shortages of teachers in certain subjects are very real, and they're happening soon, if not happening now. So how do we handle that? How do we deal with it? Is it looking at the education programs in higher ed or at the certification process? I would like to take the time to mention that I went for school psychology via individual pathways. It's an alternative track, and I think it's wonderful. I got that after my PhD. So importantly, how do we engage in students today so that they want to come to school and be active learners who see the relevancy and value of their academic work to college and technical and vocational training, careers, and to real life? I believe strongly that this is a challenge. The most important thing is to get our students to see the connection and that college and higher education, if you're seeking more vocational education, is important and relevant. Our partners in this process are very, very important. We must work with our community, with our parents. We can't leave our parents behind. And with our legislatures, because some of these things do cost money, especially the need for mental health services in our districts. In order to prepare for this, it was such short notice, I was able to get in touch with some superintendents and building level personnel. And the cry, these are districts outside of Saratoga, the cry for mental health services is absolutely great. They're trying to partner with the services that are available with them, but they need more funding. So how do we enrich and sustain all our relationships? And how do we also sustain our standards of learning? Also, we can never forget about our partners working in the field of education today. That's the administrators and our teachers, our counselors, because they offer us great insight, feedback, and value. And their input is as useful to us as everyone else's when we are creating plans and making decisions. So I believe this. I am a professor, and I believe that in looking in these ways to approach situations to these concerns, decision makers need to keep several factors in mind as they frame their plans. This is a new world. It is the 20th century now. It's filled with new technologies, new tools, work, and jobs has changed. And as someone who teaches human resource management with a background in organizational behavior, organizational structure and development and management, and who actually has a background in business and maintains those relationships for internships, etc. I can tell you that today employers want very different skills in the past, and I have had to update my skills as well. Real critical thinking skills are needed. It's the ability to adapt and to apply knowledge, to use the technology is paramount. In 2019, I went down to Georgetown University and I got my certificate in artificial intelligence management because I knew that HR departments and industry were moving forward, incorporating AI into their management and operations. And I needed to be up to date. Currently, AI tools are being used in recruitment, selection, and performance appraisal processes. And I had the obligation to my students not only to put that in as content that they needed to learn, but because they themselves needed to learn how to use them and how to be aware of all these processes that were going on in employment. So the pandemic did change things from what I'm reading right here. As I was waiting for you, I was reading Preparing for School. From what I'm reading, seeing, hearing, we are moving to a distributive workforce. Okay, and some kind of hybrid work, which means working remotely and semi-autonomously, becomes very important. Our students must know these skills so they can function successfully as automatic remote workers. Having these skills can also help students who choose to go on to higher education path online. So bringing practices that are currently in higher education and professional development, and I can show you how they relate, into K through 12 academics, I believe can be very helpful in enhancing learning and evaluation practices and developing lifelong learners. Okay, so what I think I can bring to the board is my unique perspective, shaped by my multidisciplinary background and experience in school counseling, higher education, sociology, psychology, management, as well as a systems way of thinking. Along with that, I've worked on 2 boards, on committees within and across departments and schools. At RPI Lally School of Management, I did work on an institute-wide change program. I successfully piloted that program for the Lally School. I sincerely care about students, especially in public education. I truly want to see them prepared for their best life. I had a public education. I'm committed to equity in education and employment. And I believe as a society, if we remember that our goal is to help our children, our society children, we can work together to achieve great results. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Friedman. I appreciate that clear presentation. Did I see your hand up, Senator Mayor?
Yes,
Maybe
you did.
not.
But I did, but I put it down. I'm good. thank you.
Okay, I'm sorry. Then we'll go to Mr. Walchik.
Dr. Freeman, thank you for your
Yes.
service in
Thank you.
in education. Your resume is incredibly impressive, and I want to apologize for the short notice and just a note to the chairs. There's an example. Dr. Freeman found her resume to us even on short notice, but I think we're always best when we cast a wide net and get great candidates like her. And we're glad that on a short timeline you got your resume to us. One thing's been on my mind and kind of come up in a couple of these interviews already, is the division that we've seen in our country and in our society. And I wonder how you balance, especially with your background, how you balance the principles of the First Amendment and free speech with having a rural school district where there's law and order and students need to be kept in line. How do you manage that balance?
Okay, one of the things that I think is extremely important and that we truly need to begin to get into our schools is really media literacy and really understanding about information online, how to use online, what does social media mean? All these kinds of things are important to that. As for behavior problems in school, that's where the social emotional aspect comes in. That's where it's very important for us to try to give children and our students a sense of themselves, of their accomplishments, of self-control. How do they learn self-control? We have to learn, rather really strengthen the partnership with parents. Parents have to be on board, and we need the supports to help. Why is a student unruly? Why? Is it that they're angry? What is it that's causing it at the school? And until you find out that problem, why, you won't know.
Well, thank you, Doctor. I appreciate it. That's the only topic that I wanted you to touch on. I appreciate your service and I wish you the best of luck. I think you'd make a great reader.
I know it is a big problem.
Thank you. Ms. Werner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Dr. Freeman, for being part of this process and for throwing your hat in the ring. I have two questions for you. The first is that you speak very eloquently about the need to really foster the relationship between secondary education and institutions of higher learning and inspiring more students to seek higher education. I'm wondering if you could speak to the role that BOCES and career and technical education play in the middle school and high school experience.
I'm truly not familiar with that. What I have had in my own experience within this particular area was that there were, at the time that I was involved with this, which might have been about 6 years ago, that there was a really more pull away from the emphasis on, I'd say, like vocational and technical training. So I don't understand that, but a part of it, I could get a better answer for you. I'm sorry about it. I don't have that information. If I did, it was not something that had come to my attention. But what I do think is that if they can increase what it is that they do to promote information about education and jobs and careers, then I'm all for it. Because we need to have that information. And if that is part of what they do, then I'm all for supporting all of their efforts, because the relationship of academics to work and careers needs to start very early. It needs to start as information that children learn in elementary school, so that it gives them a reason to study, to have hope, to know that I can go on and I can get a goal. So college and career should be something that we talk about all through school, the same way that we should bring in our accomplishments of what we got as a class and as an individual each year that are leading to where it is we think we want to go. So
thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. My second question, and you touched on it in your opening remarks, that many of our schools are experiencing high rates of retirement and challenges recruiting new teachers. So I'm wondering if you could reflect with some degree of specificity on what are the things that you think specifically the State Education Department and the Board of Regents can do to better support the profession of teaching and bring more quality educators into our classrooms.
Okay, well, at one aspect, I'll deal with it, that is really recruitment. If you want new people into the profession, you've got to start really showing them what are the positive things associated with being a teacher. But on a very practical level, it's that relationship between your education programs and your schools. And what I have really sort of determined from my conversations in these last 2 days is that it may be very difficult to actually work with the education programs about, working with what it is they need. They need to offer the credits. They need to get paid for their degree, and they have requirements that they must meet to grant a degree. So there might not be that much flexibility there. However, the flexibility may actually be to speed up the certification process, may actually be flexibility with the student teaching part. And that could be something where students would either get credit towards certification, be on a special, perhaps a new or temporary student teacher certificate, where they can actually be working with, because after my conversations, I am sure, because this was at the district level, I am sure that schools, they are willing to do those. If they want weekly, daily evaluations of the teacher's performance, they're going to do that in order to get someone in the school who can teach. There was an example, for example, with a STEM teacher. I understand that DSs are using their discretionary powers in some school districts to fill slots that can't be filled with the qualified professional exemption that they have. So it's looking in a more creative way at the certification process without lowering the standards of teacher certification. That's just one way. I know it's a very complicated issue because we want to keep the standards, but we have to look at alternative ways, and it could be a short-term solution. It doesn't have to last forever.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chairman?
Thank you. Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Dr. Freeman, thank you so much for joining us. So I'm looking at your most recent work experience that's listed here, Director of Undergraduate Education. So I think that is some interesting experience. So I'd like to direct the question to you. We're consistently hearing that students may not always be prepared for post-secondary education or the workforce. What do you think is something that, as a member of the Board of Regents, you can do to enhance or maybe make more cohesive the transition from secondary education to either higher education or working in the workforce with your experience?
Okay, well, I have thought about that. And that is speaks to the point that I made about taking some of these practices that are currently in higher education and also from training and development that we use, and you have probably experienced, which is all based from social psychology principles, into K through 12 education. So this is more of really getting in that experiential learning. In some school districts, internships, because it's a community partnership that you want. Internships may actually be in an area where it can be promoted. It might not work in a rural school district because the students would be maybe too far away from the businesses that they could partner, but there could be other ways. But it's what we call that experiential learning experience.
The authentic learning, it seems like you're talking about some more authentic learning.
And authentic, and the other thing that goes along with that, preparing them, is when you start having these alternative and authentic experiences, the only way you can do that is through to evaluate them is through using alternative and authentic assessments. And I have real proof.
Okay, that actually goes into my next question, and I want to keep it very brief because we're running very much behind schedule, but if I could, when you're talking about evaluating students, because we hear not every student's, students are more than a test score. I think it sounds like you're about to get into that. Please, if you could.
Yes. Okay, so I was in charge of something, writing and managing and creating the curriculum for, it was called a Janine Grant Fellowship. And what I had to do was not only create a curriculum, because they were going over to China to work with IBM Value for 8 weeks. And I had to create a curriculum, and also how was I going to assess learning? Yikes. So I got into learning about all alternate assessments that can be used. So with that, you're looking at portfolios, you're looking at self-reflections, you're looking at having people come back and teach others what is it that they learned. So simply K through 12, children break up, they go to ELA, they go to math. When they come back to the classroom and the leader could rotate, they report, this is what we accomplished in our section of math 4 today. And then the other students went to other math 4, they report. So everybody knows what everyone else is doing. They go, that's building lots of skills at that point. Okay.
Okay.
Assess things. Okay.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the insight on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we appreciate your insight in so many of the areas. And we appreciate your presentation, Ms. Friedman.
Oh, thank you.
We will be back in touch with you, hopefully shortly, when we make a decision in this area. But in the meantime, we thank you for your time today and have a good afternoon.
Oh, I'm going to a management graduation party at Skidmore when I leave here. So yes.
Well, just behave yourself at that party, okay?
Thank you very much.
Okay, have a nice one now.
I truly
Bye-bye.
appreciate your taking the time. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. We shall move on. Our next person to be interviewed is Mr. David Cokes. Will we please let Mr. Cokes into the room to be interviewed?
He is here.
Good afternoon. Did I do this correctly?
Mr. Cokes, am I pronouncing that last name correctly?
That is correct.
Then we welcome you, Mr. Cokes, to the interview process here. I'm Assemblyman Mike Benedetto. I'm chairman of the Assembly Education Committee. I'm joined with many of my colleagues, both in the Senate and in the Assembly, for this interview process. And let me assure you, this is a casual conversation type process, and we want to give you some time, maybe, 2-3 minutes or so, to kind of give us a presentation of what David Cokes is all about and why you want to be a regent, followed by time that we will ask questions. Okay, so with that introduction, the floor is yours, Mr. Cokes.
Very good. Thank you very much. I know you guys are running behind. I will be brief. Good afternoon. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to meet with you to discuss my interest in serving on the New York State Board of Regents. My motivation for serving in the capacity as a regent is quite simple. After devoting 32 years serving the students and parents of my district, I see this position as a way to continue a career of public service in the hopes of being able to further advance the possibilities for our young people. I feel that my long tenure as a special education teacher at a rural school at every level from K through 12 gives me a wide perspective on the needs of our students and our schools. As a local union president, I have worked with school administration to help implement directives and have direct experience with the impact of those directives, not only on our school districts, but more importantly on our children. I've always had positive interactions with past regents in the 4th Judicial District and feel that having a career teacher on the Board of Regents would help foster the belief among educators that we all share the same goals of helping the students of New York maximize the benefits of their public education. I believe I would be an asset to the board, and I look forward to the chance to serve in this important capacity.
Wow, nice and brief, right to the point. I'm impressed, Mr. Cokes. We have a question from Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So thank you for being brief. That's incredible. Maybe we'll catch up. But thank you for your time. Thank you for joining us. I'm loving that you have 30 years experience in the classroom. I think that just adds something that I don't want to say is missing, but we're talking about authentic experience. So could you hit us with just a flavor for your educational philosophy? And I know that's an impossible question, but if you could kind of like, what drives you? What inspires you? What makes you want to wake up in the morning and do this every day?
The fact of the opportunity to see students succeed, and success is not measured by post-secondary education, going to college. Success is measured by getting out there, being a productive citizen, being happy with what you're doing, and being good at what you're doing. I'm also a town judge, and unfortunately, I see the other side of kids that fail at school. I see far too many former students that come into my court and, Mr. Cokes, I let you down. Mr. Cokes, I couldn't do this. Mr. Cokes, this, I have the former students that go into plumbing, electrical, and carpentry. Obviously not college bound things, but they're very successful. They probably make more money than I do. So what gets me going is the chance to see those kids succeed. And some of them are kids who hate school every day. And they come into my room and they're like, I got to get away from this, or I got to get away from that. Sometimes they're skipping English to get away from that, but that's a whole different ball of wax. But they're coming in, they're happy, they do get by and succeed. And that's what you like to see. And I don't care how they succeed. The fact that they get out there, they succeed, and they have their kids, and hopefully their kids then grow up and we see generations of them here. So yes, I've taught children and their children. So to see that to work, I think it's heartwarming. It makes you get up and say, okay, I did the right thing with my life.
I like it a lot. And I'm looking at, I notice you worked at Saranac Lake Central School District, which my predecessor in the assembly, even though I'm down on Long Island, was a town supervisor, Al Graff. People would be shocked to know that he was town supervisor up in Saranac Lake. So he's told me, and he was previously a teacher, he's told me stories working at that school. So please, if you could tell us, working in a very rural, as I understand it, community, probably gives you a different perspective than, I'm in suburbia, very dense. A number of our colleagues are from New York City, as we call it, the city. Please, if you could expand on how that would add a value, because I think that it may diversify and add that. And I'll close with that question.
Okay, not to correct you, but it was Saranac, not Saranac Lake. They're very, very separate.
Oh, I apologize.
And that was 30 plus years ago. That was one of my first jobs. Northeastern. But yeah, Northeastern is just.
Billy Jones is going to make fun of me for that. Sorry about that.
Oh yeah, he's going to laugh at you for this one. So the rural school, what people really don't understand, and I did teach down in the Albany area for a time, but the rural schools, what you really can't do. One of the things I was in charge of at one point in time was work experience for some of our special education students. There's not a lot of places to give them a work experience. There's Price Chopper, Obashan Hardware, and the local mini mart. We don't have access to a lot of the things that some of these more urban schools or suburban schools have. My wife started her career down at Shaker, where they were able to go to the museum down in Albany, where they were able to go to festivals and things like that. Our closest museum is the Transportation Museum in Plattsburgh. You can see 5 cars and a bicycle. We don't have, so the rural schools, it's much more difficult. And you can do virtual field trips all you want. It's not the same. Seeing a dinosaur on a computer screen is not the same as going to the museum and seeing the 400-foot head of a dinosaur. So the rural aspect of that is something that does need to be addressed. And I don't know that everybody, because if you haven't been here, it's hard to appreciate the fact that, I drive 25 miles to go to my closest real grocery store.
I appreciate that. Thank you for your time on this. I find your experience to be an asset, or it could be an asset. So nice to meet you, and thank you for coming.
Thank you.
We'll go to the chair of the Senate Education Committee, Chair Shelley Mayer.
Thank you, Mr. Cokes. Thank you for being here. Regent Oderkirk was really a voice for rural schools at the Board of Regents, and I think it's very important to the regents to have that voice. So you have a lot of experience teaching in a rural district. and combined with the special ed perspective. I mean, if you were to be on the Board of Regents and having been president of the Teachers Union, do you have specific recommendations for what rural schools need really post-COVID or in the COVID recovery and moving ahead that you would put on the table? Have you given thought to that?
Yeah, my wife actually, she just retired, so she did get stuck teaching during the I say stuck because it was very difficult. So she did have to go through that, and it's it's the same old story. You need broadband coverage, you need this, that, you need the computer access. But I think what a lot of people don't understand is in these rural areas is when just in my last 3 or 4 years, so I retired in 2019. In 2017, 2018, I had an argument with one of my teachers because he was requiring every student to hand things in online. No papers, no nothing. And I looked at him and I finally said to him, I said, you don't understand. I teach 6 kids with no electricity in their house. And I had 2 kids with no plumbing in their house. So one kid, he's going down, we finally got him showers at the school because he was going to the river to take his bath. It was 35 degrees out. Now, I don't know how many of you have jumped in a river at 35 degrees out to take your bath, but nobody likes it. So the kid came in filthy. We finally got him showers before school. We were able to arrange some transportation so that he was able to take a shower. And he came out one day and said, my God, he was looking at his arm and he goes, I'm so white. He was used to being black with dirt. So kind of goes around. So that broadband access, but we need to make sure there's basic infrastructure in some of these areas. And you can't have broadband access if you don't have electricity. And even if you have electricity and broadband access, you don't care if you don't have running water in your house. So those are things that I don't know that a whole lot of people can appreciate in some of these rural areas. And I was driving down to a golf tournament, and we go through I have to drive through Hamilton County. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Hamilton County, but there's not a lot there. And so to ask people, I looked at some of these houses, the nearest store was 25 miles, not even a regular store, like the nearest convenience store was 25 miles away. These are children and students that are way behind the 8 ball on some of these technology things. Do I have a fix for it? Absolutely not. I just know what the problem is.
Thank you. Thank you for your honesty about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Walchik.
Mr. Cox, thanks for your volunteering to do this, and thanks for your service in education. Some of the questions about rural schools were already answered, which I really appreciate. And that obviously for the replacement for Regent Oderkirk, that those are the shoes to fill. She was the advocate for our poor rural school districts for sure. Should schools consolidate in the state of New York?
Sometime, that's if they want to. I actually was part of when I taught in Saranac. Before I taught in Saranac, and I pared down my resume, but before I taught in Saranac, I did teach in Dannemora. Dannemora was its own school district at one point in time, 1989, 1988, something like that. You'd think I know when I taught there, but anyway, it was a long time ago. So Saranac and Dannemora did merge. And to the benefit of the students, I believe that case they benefited. If you go up to where I am now, probably our smallest school is Shazy Central School. Mr. Jones, you might know Shazy. Very small school, but they have a very tight culture. If you asked Shazy to merge with my district, Northeastern Clinton, right next door, you would have a parent and student revolt. These people are Shazy born and bred. They love their school. If you told Shazy School they had to have an 87% tax increase to keep their school, they would vote for an 87% tax increase. It would never work. They have that culture. Are there other schools that benefit from consolidation? Absolutely. They're small, but on the flip side, if you take some of our rural schools, the next district over from us is Northern Adirondack. If you took Northeastern Clinton and Northern Adirondack end to end and merged them, you would have students traveling some 70 to 80 miles, I believe, if my geography is correct. you got kids traveling 70, 80 miles to get to school. And those are, some of those would be elementary kids. Let's put a kindergarten on a bus for an hour and a half. So
Oh, thanks.
it's a complicated issue. There is no right or wrong answer. There's just different.
Thanks for the context and the answer. I really appreciate it. Last question. What is the ideal temperature for a high school classroom?
65 degrees because they can't fall asleep. No.
Thank you. I appreciate you interviewing today and wish you the best of luck.
Thank you very much. Assemblymember Werner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Cokes, for being part of our process. You clearly have amazing experience in rural schools and would be a great voice for rural education. My question for you is one that I've asked all the candidates, and that is that we are seeing a shortage of teachers. Many districts are experiencing significant retirements. You mentioned your wife had just recently retired, and the ability to recruit new teachers into the profession is a struggle in many areas. And so I'm wondering if you could reflect with some specificity on what ideas you would have on how the state education department and the Board of Regents could better support the profession of teaching and bring in, recruit and retain more qualified teachers into the classroom.
I'll put on my union hat for a second, if people don't mind. I think the biggest impediment to recruiting new teachers is the nonstop, and I believe it's increased from when I started, is the nonstop blame game of it's the teacher's fault that the kid doesn't have breakfast. It's a teacher's fault the kid doesn't do homework. Again, let's go back to that kid with no electricity. It's my fault that he didn't get homework done because it had to be done on a computer. It's always, 1 year we had to do, in fact, I had stopped doing this. So this will be my longest story and then I'll stop talking. We had to do these things where we were reporting, we had to keep binders and folders of, I think it was for APPR, of the things we were doing to help our students succeed. One of the questions was, what are you doing to make sure that your students are passing? I said, oh, I'm giving them their homework and giving them their grades. That's what they're doing. So I'm doing all this. A kid comes into my room and asks me for help. And it was during one of my prep periods, and kids are always in and out during my prep periods. And I'm like, I'm sorry, kiddo, I can't help you right now. I have to do this binder of what I'm doing to help kids. I didn't tell the student that, and I'm like, I have to work on this binder. And she looks at me, she goes, but I really need help right now. I said, come back later. She goes, this is my study hall. I really need some help. And I said, well, I can't help you. I'm doing this binder. And I looked at the binder, which is supposed to be telling all the things I'm doing to help students. And I took my binder and I threw it in my garbage. And I said, come over here, I help you. I never did a binder again. My principal and I disagreed on this ad infinitum. But it goes back to that blame game of what are you doing to help students? And the teachers are always seem to be at fault. And if we could get away from that, I think you would then have long-term teachers now pushing that profession and saying, yeah, this is a great job. Again, I'm town judge. Nobody comes to me and says, hey, Judge Cokes, you're sending too many people to jail. You're a lousy judge. But people are saying, you've got too many kids failing. I taught special ed, so that kind of tilts the factor, or tilts the scales out of my favor a little bit. I tended to have more students that struggle. That's the nature of special education. So now am I a lousy teacher because I have 5 kids failing? No, because maybe those kids had the potential to score 60s and they're scoring 68s and missing by 2 points instead of by 10 points. The other thing is, I think if we were to push, and I heard a question earlier about vocational education and VOCES, and it's called CV Tech up here. If we were to make those professions more valuable, I don't know if any of you have tried to hire a plumber or contractor lately. You can't do it. I had our neighbor who's a really good contractor, and we're friends with his parents, And he did a rush job for us, and we only had to wait 6 months to get our windows put in because he put us higher on the list because we're friends. If we could push some of those programs and let's value plumbing, carpentry, heavy equipment operators, who wants to drive a snowplow for 24 hours in the dead of winter, and make those as valuable as some of these college for every student programs and things like that. I think that's going to now engage some more kids in their being more engaged in their education, and it's going to make them more engaged with the school and take away some of those problems. And then we're not going to have why are all of your students failing? But to get back to the main question, lose the blame game. It's everybody's fault these kids are failing. It is not one group or one person. And then we should also appreciate, to everybody's benefit, that some of these kids are doing really well. Let's also make sure we're paying attention to those kids, because I also had my son was a fairly high achieving student, and he really didn't get a whole heck of a lot of attention in school because he was doing well. So who cares? He's all set. He'll graduate, go to college, and he makes more than I do now. So he's good.
All right, thank you so much. I appreciate it, Mr. Chairman.
Sorry for the rambling answer.
No, it's good.
And to close, Senator Stavisky.
Thank you to close. And thank you for presenting you're representing the rural school districts. It's interesting because I represent and in fact grew up in the city of New York, which is an urban, densely populated area. I taught in the New York City public high schools. Our areas could not be more different. And I firmly believe that we certainly do need somebody from the rural North Country to represent us on the Board of Regents, without a doubt. I think we have to realize that this is one state with lots of different ingredients. I want to ask you, I'm just curious, a real quick answer. You were asked about the consolidation of school districts and that children would have to be transported great distances. Why would that be necessary? Couldn't you just transfer the administrators? I'm serious. I'm very serious about that question.
I'm not sure I understand how. Because
why would you have to close schools if you consolidated school districts? You would save on administrative costs. There'd be other savings, but why would you have to close schools?
Generally speaking, my experience closing schools is you're also trying to get rid of some physical plants. And so if you take my high school that I teach in and the neighboring school that is, I think the schools are 40 to 50 miles apart, you're not going to keep both of those high school buildings. So at some point you either need to make a central location, or you have to bus them to one place or the other. And my other experience in our school we didn't consolidate, but we did close. When I started at Northeastern Clinton, we had five buildings, 3 elementary schools, 1 junior high, and 1 high school. Each one of those had an administrator. 30 years later, not 30 years later, in the past, we closed one of those elementary schools. We now have, as of this new budget, so we had 5 administrators, 2,100 students, and 150 teachers. We now have 1,325 students, 120 teachers, and 7 administrators. You do the math. So they are not, when you do these consolidations, nothing against administration. Some of my good friends are administrators, but they rarely seem to cut administration when they do consolidate.
That's why I'm asking the question, frankly. I see you serve as would you be continuing your volunteer experience? I guess you're paid at the as a town justice or on the Board of Assessors?
Yes. So the Board of Assessment review 1 day a year, so it's really not that involved.
Yeah.
Small town. I have court every other Thursday, and then I do things. I did call down to the judicial ethics board people to ask if this was a possibility to do this as well as serve as town justice. And they said yes. In fact, they have a town justice who serves with the board of, I think it's the Board of Regents for one of the professional licensing. I think she works as a EMT. So we do have that in
You've
place. But I
answered
need
my
to check
question.
with that.
The answer is there'd be no conflict. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And thank you, Mr. Cokes, for being here and taking your time and putting up with these questions. And we really appreciate your interest in joining the Board of Regents and being part of the New York State educational structure. We will be back in touch with you one way or the other, and hopefully very shortly. Thank you for your time.
All right. Very
Have a
good.
good
Thank you very much.
afternoon.
We got closer to back on schedule.
Okay, bye-bye. Okay.
Bye.
Next was supposed to be Edward Pontacaloni. But Mr. Pontacaloni has withdrawn his application and does not want to be considered. So we'll go to our last candidate for Regents of District 4, and that is Mr. Roger P. Catania. Mr. Catania, is he in the vicinity?
He is here, yes.
He is, very good. And Mr. Catania, you are here very promptly. We've had other people who have been rather long to get here, but you I'd like you for your promptness, sir. Let me introduce myself. I'm Assemblyman Mike Benedetto. I'm chairman of the Assembly Education Committee, and I'm joined by my colleagues both in the Assembly and in the Senate, and for this interview process. And this interview process is really a casual process. We just want to hear from you for maybe 2 or 3 minutes about why you want to be a regent and what Robert Catania is all about. And then we'll have some time for questions and answer. Okay, and with that, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Benedetto. And I want to thank all the members of the committee for being here and for inviting me to speak with you today. I have a couple minutes prepared, and then I'll be happy to answer your questions. So I want you to know that it's an honor for me to be speaking with you about the Board of Regents' 4th Judicial District. This was the position recently held by the late Bev Oderkirk, who represented the North Country and all 11 counties within the district with great heart, soul, and spirit. She worked closely with school districts like mine, and we all got to know and to really appreciate and love the work that Bev did. Bev never forgot who she was ultimately here to serve, and that was the children and youth of New York State. So Bev leaves big shoes to fill, and I would do my best to live up to her standards. So who am I? I'm a lifelong educator of 35 years, most recently serving as the superintendent of Lake Placid Central School District, which is in the heart of the Adirondack Mountains. And I was superintendent up until my retirement this past August. I've been a resident of the North Country for 25 years, but I didn't start in the North Country. My grandparents were Sicilian immigrants. My parents were raised in Brooklyn and graduated from New York City public schools and public universities. I'm a native New Yorker, born and raised in Westchester County. I'm a graduate of the Scarsdale Public Schools, State University of I'm a graduate of the State University of New York in Binghamton, and I earned my master's in teaching at Manhattanville College. My first full-time teaching position was in New York City, and I wrote my doctoral dissertation on the history of 2 New York City progressive schools. My wife, Amy, and I raised 2 boys who are true North Country natives, and that's James, who's age 18 and just finished his first year at the University of Rochester, and Lewis, who's 21 and is about to graduate from Oberlin College. If elected as a regent, I would be a voice on the board for rural New York children and schools. But I would also see my role as serving all New Yorkers, and that includes urban, rural, and suburban children, their families, their schools, and of course, our colleges, our universities, our cultural institutions, and the professions, the responsibility of the Board of Regents. The question was asked, what do I hope to accomplish as a regent? One of the most significant challenges in all of New York, I believe, is the gap in opportunities that separates poor and privileged children. So those children who benefit from the best support and opportunities are often the most successful students in schools, and they often have multiple pathways for success in life. We support those children, and as we should. But we have many other children who struggle in multiple ways and often lack the access to opportunities that makes success in school and life more difficult. What I would hope to bring to the Regents is a focus on the opportunity gap and working toward a collective effort for narrowing that gap with my fellow Regents. That was my focus as superintendent in my school district, and that would be my focus if elected as a regent. Of course, the Regents' responsibilities are extensive, and in all areas, I would do my best to listen, ask questions, study, research, and provide the best and most thoughtful decisions possible. So I thank you for your interest and for your consideration, and I would welcome any questions you have for me.
Thank you very much, Mr. Catania, for your remarks. They were concise and they were well taken. Let's begin this. I'll begin this with my co-chairman, the Senate Education Committee Chairperson, Shelley Mayer.
Thank you, Mr. Catania. Thank you for identifying that opportunity gap as one of the biggest challenges the Board of Regents faces statewide, rural districts, suburban districts, urban districts. In terms of efforts to fix that gap, other than money, which the legislature has done a good job in the last 2 years of finally getting schools what they were owed and getting to the end of the foundation aid formula, and then we'll have to rethink it. What are your ideas for how the Regents should be as aggressive as possible in identifying and fixing the opportunity gap for these poor students in our districts?
You know, well, it's obviously not easily fixed, right?
No.
And why is that? Because it's not just a school problem. It's a social concern, right? And so we have social inequality at the root of underachievement in school. And it's hard to overcome the power of what's going on outside in kids' lives, the struggles that many of them have with what we do in school. But still, there's lots we can do. I'll give you some examples of things that we did and other schools are doing as well. You know, for example, trying to address the food concern, access to food, right? So we all heard about, and we in Lake Placid instituted a backpack program so that we could make sure that kids are fed on the weekends. But I think one of the benefits of the pandemic is we learned that, you know, we don't have to rely on the free reduced lunch program to identify kids who may need food. What we can do is we can provide food for all kids. And that's what we've been doing for the last couple of years in schools. And it's been remarkable. In other words, to just level that playing field and eliminate that whole issue of identifying who those people are in need. Other big things that we can do, universal pre-K, research-based, can make huge changes in the lives of children and in our communities down the road. So why don't we all have the kind of statewide universal pre-K system that we have in Lake Placid? And we only have it because we were able to successfully get the grant that came out 7 or 8 years ago. But many, many other districts either have a lesser program or none at all. And so that I believe is going to make probably as big a difference. And that's before they get to kindergarten, right? We also have a region-wide birth to 3 focus in the Tri-County area. That's Essex, Franklin, and Clinton County, plus expanded to some other counties in other ways. Our school district collaborates with the Birth to 3 network because, again, we're trying to help kids and families get off to the right start. So anyway, I think that there's a lot we can do, but I also think that one of the things the Board of Regents can do is to articulate this issue, especially as it exists outside of schools, so that this becomes part of the discourse, and so that we're not just talking about solving problems with high stakes testing, but we're talking about solving problems with more supports for children and families outside of school as well.
Thank you so much. Thank you very, very much for that.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Smolin.
Thank you, Chair. Appreciate it. Roger, it's great to see you here today. I'm from Gloversville, the southern part of the Adirondacks, represent the west half in the upper part of the Mohawk Valley at present sort of thing. And one of the things that I've been very concerned with over the past 2 years in particular, but really going forward, since in this pandemic, we've essentially accelerated 10 years of technological change into 1 year, is this actual rural divide that you spoke of quite briefly. Could you comment as superintendent what your thoughts are on closing the digital divide for students in rural school districts where often they don't have access at home to that asset, which is that knowledge portal? Could you talk to us about that?
Sure. Well, I can tell you that the pandemic sure exposed that, right? So that we all became very aware of where those problem areas were for kids and families, especially in rural areas. It's not just about family income. It can be and often is about family income, but it's also about where people live and what kind of technology they have. So it's one of those issues that's hard to address from the schools, but there are some things that we can do. For example, I know that some school districts have made sure that there was access in community centers and certain areas outside of school, using the bus as a way to move that wireless hub so that people could access it. One of the things we did in Lake Placid is we did a loaner program where we loaned out devices that were able to access the internet through the cell towers. And that's sort of unique. It's going to be unique to different areas. We represent not just the town of North Elba, but also the town of Wilmington. And we found that there were bigger issues in Wilmington than there were in North Elba. And so we had to address them differently. I imagine in Gloversville, they have some different issues as well. But I think it's really important to assess what's missing, how are you going to get there? How are you going to get, if it's a matter of getting it to the community, how are you going to do that? If it's a matter of getting it to the person, we know there are some ways to do that. And unfortunately there are some needs there in terms of resources. The school can't do that without actually purchasing some of these devices, right? Some of it's more expensive than others, and you can try and figure that out. But statewide, I think continuing to move forward on the digital divide is ultimately the most helpful thing.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Werner.
Thank you, Mr. Catania, for being here and for participating in the process. I'm going to ask you the same question I've asked each of the applicants today. Many of our school districts are seeing increasing rates of retirement and are challenged to recruit teachers into the profession. And so I'm wondering if you could reflect with some degree of specificity, what are some of the ways that SED and the Board of Regents can better support the profession of teaching and bring qualified educators into the classroom?
Right. So I lived this problem as superintendent, right? Because I came in after the Great Recession when we had so many out of work teachers that there were so many applicants, but then a lot of them had left the profession. And then as the years have gone on, fewer and fewer are available, to now where especially we're weak in STEM teachers and special ed teachers and substitute teachers. My goodness, you can't find a substitute teacher anywhere. Some schools are closing their doors or going remote because of that. So what can you do, right? It's a hard thing, but I think that there are ways to look at the issue. I think you can look at it through the preparation piece, right? To make sure that preparation is meaningful, that prospective teachers want to enter the profession, see the preparation as meaningful, and pursue it that way. But I also think that the profession itself needs to have some differences also. So for example, teachers don't always need the highest salaries. I think salaries are a part of it, but they often need a balance between improved working conditions and improved salaries. And so I think that that idea of good working conditions is just as important as increased salaries, so that, again, future prospective teachers see the profession as something that they can do to, provide for themselves and support their families. Teachers need to support their families also, and you don't want them to have a night job or a weekend job, right? We heard all those stories coming out of Oklahoma and those states where the teachers went on strike, and that's what happens when you rely on that. So I think working conditions and salaries. Couple other things that I think would really help. One of them is alternative pathways. We have talented people out there who are in other professions who want to find more meaning in their life. And let me tell you, there are very few professions as meaningful as teaching. And I think a lot of teachers have experienced that. So as they do that, I see Assemblyman Smith's waving hand. Maybe he did that too. I'm not sure. But alternative pathways really can make a difference. So in other words, to make it easier for someone who's been in some other professional area to enter teaching without sending them back to college for 4 years. And then I want to add one other piece, which I think the regions, certainly the state, has oversight over, and this is the teacher certification system. The teacher certification system is a challenge, and it's not very transparent. It's very complex, and this is especially true for people who aren't in pre-approved programs throughout the state. It also has some trouble with customer service as well. So someone who's trying to get certified can't get their questions answered. So I do believe that it needs to be faster and more transparent. And that's without looking at some of the challenges of the requirements themselves. But I would start with that and then look closely at those requirements. I think sometimes the practice becomes really more of a tedious effort of jumping through some hoops, not all. Some of this is very important, but some of it, frankly, is not. And we could do a better job of reducing that. So I hope that answered your questions. I gave you about 5 different possibilities. I hope that answered your question.
When I asked for some specificity, you certainly did that. So thank you very much. I much appreciate it, Mr. Chairman.
My chairman of the Higher Education Committee in the State Assembly, Ms. Deborah Glick.
Thank you very much. I think that there are clearly logistical problems around broadband in a lot of the state, but it's also equally problematic in poor communities in urban settings where the family can't afford it. And so we have kids that sit outside of a library at night in order to do that. And we've had to pass some legislation to say, for the homeless kids in a shelter, they have to be able to have broadband there. So I think it is a very big issue, and never appreciated the former governor trying to say that 98% of the state was covered. That was just wrong. So let me ask you this about what you think we can do for students who want to go into some professions, but the point is they're more isolated, and if they have to have clinical experience, where are they going to get that? If they're going to college and they want to go into some professions, what do you think the state can actually do or should be doing to provide students with the information about the broad range of professions, jobs that are out there, and to help them make a decision? I am concerned that we too often suggest that you're 17, you have to know what you're going to do for the rest of your life.
Right.
That troubles me. On the other hand, if somebody is not going to go to college or may choose to go later on, people take time off. What can we do a better job of providing students with understanding opportunities that might completely change their lives? That you live in a small area, you don't have a lot of experience with different opportunities. What can we do to make sure that kids are making not only good choices for themselves, something they have a passion in, something that they love, something they're going to excel in, and something we're all going to benefit from, because they're going to find themselves doing something that's amazing, and they didn't know about it, never would have known about it because of where they grew up and the family they're in, and limited horizons.
Yeah, so the job in a high school that oversees that experience is typically the school counselor. And depending on the caseload of a school counselor, you may get more or less experience with job options. What I have found, and so I have a history of being a school counselor, which plays into this a little bit. What I've found is that the more real life experience a kid can have, the better they're going to understand some of these things, which up until now have just been sort of like distant passing mentions. Somebody says, or just their own immediate experience of, they know a doctor and they know a teacher, and that they think that's their only two choices. You have to give them access to far more options. I think that there are career exploration programs that can be where we could shine a light on them. So there are some good ones out there, I think, that are operating now, but that not everybody is using. In order to shine a light on these programs where kids actually get to go into the field and do these jobs. And I'm talking about everything from getting out there with the plumber, getting out there with the surgeon. We sent kids into operating rooms before to getting out there with the interior decorator, and sometimes with, say, the lawyer or the insurance person. But of course, a half day with the insurance person sometimes doesn't excite them as much. But yeah, that's how they respond always. But in fact, of course, there's lots of really good opportunities in these fields, and so figuring out how to highlight them and then to get kids there. And so there are immersion programs you can do. What do they require? Well, they require people to oversee them and to organize them. It's really an organizing job. They require people in the community who are willing to contribute their knowledge and expertise in a day or a week or whatever it is. But I also think you could ramp it up. Like typically a school like ours, we might do a shadow in their sophomore year, or a shadow in their junior year, and say, okay, well, now you know. But I think you could actually ramp it up and really increase those experiences as they get older to where they have a day, a week, or more, maybe utilizing the summer, maybe utilizing the experience of, say, like paid internships, which would really get kids in there, right? We have a hard time sometimes in a tourist town like Lake Placid of getting kids to do things where they're not getting paid, when the restaurants are dying to pay them, good wage plus tips. So that's a tough competition, finding ways to meet that competition in whatever community that you're in. So I think the best thing is experience. And I think in higher ed, I think we tend to rely on the technical schools and the technical programs, and there are a few, but not as many, and not as well known. And I think that they could be better known. They sometimes offer some terrific possibilities. And then the apprenticeships. Very few people know about apprenticeship options, and yet that might be, in the end, the best way, especially for someone going into a technical career who doesn't want to go the four-year college route. I think the apprenticeship, overseen and organized, and provide some standards from the educational side, like the Regents, could really be beneficial as well.
Thank you. Mr. Otis, do you have a question for us?
I certainly do.
Well,
Thank you.
Go right ahead then.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Superintendent. I say superintendent because you bring a unique experience, if you went to the Board of Regents, of having run a school district. And what I'm most curious about is what extent understanding what comes down from SED, what comes down from the Board of Regents, and the bandwidth that every school district has to deal with all these directives and guidance and curriculum, and the ability of a school district to run a school district at the same time. And And what can you bring in terms of observations and how you would be of benefit on the Board of Regents to help mesh that kind of interaction?
Well, that's a good question. I guess where I would go with that first is I tend to believe that the many, and we do get a lot, many mandates that schools are required to, follow and respond to are well-intentioned. And I think that there's usually a good point. Usually there are problems to be resolved, but they do typically go out to all schools and all districts, some of whom experience those problems more than others. I guess I would like for the regents to be able to be aware of that there may be a gradation between some of these mandates or requirements or SED directives that are going to be, some are going to be more beneficial than others. Some are going to be more are going to be easier to implement than others, and some of them are very difficult to implement. The big issues that came down 10 years ago, when schools were identified and then had to respond with plans and then had to be evaluated based on those plans, those were very challenging. And I think the Board of Regents did know that, but a lot of it was mandated in legislation. So I guess to get that perspective of probably, I believe all of these are well-intentioned, but we need to prioritize, and we need to not overwhelm schools and school districts and teachers and administrators, and really shift sort of the focus. Because what happens is, you start to take on all these directives, you take your eye off the prize, right? The prize is the kids. And so if you find yourself always responding to these directives, sometimes you're ignoring what's important right before you. And I just think that perspective is important to have, and it's important to have some kind of flexibility. And for the state, for the State Department, for the regents to understand that flexibility can be very helpful when it comes to schools implementing these kinds of issues.
Well, thank you for that answer, and thank you for your great service as an educator so far.
Thanks.
Thank you, Assemblyman Otis. And we go to Mr. Smith to close. Mr. Smith. I'm sorry, it's not to close. Billy Jones will be coming up. Mr.
Perfect
Smith,
timing
go
for
ahead.
me, for my unmute function not to work. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, sir, for joining us for a good afternoon of these discussions. So I'm looking at your resume. It looks like you've done a lot of, you have an extensive background here, and I liked what you said about kind of trying to attach students with careers. Something you mentioned that I thought was actually funny. I recently spoke with an award-winning scientist at Brookhaven National Laboratory on Long Island, and neuroscientist who won the Medal of Science from President Obama. So she attended a career day to talk about brain studies, and no one came to her table. So this is like a world-renowned scientist, but everyone wanted to talk about cosmetology, which is very interesting to high school students. So I think your perspective there that we have careers that to match kids with what they are interested in. I think that's kind of important takeaway. What would you say? And you really hit a lot of it, but your philosophy of education. If there's something else you'd like to add that you haven't already added, what's something you could leave us as a takeaway in addition?
Well, I guess just very broadly, I do believe that all kids are of equal value. And I believe that all kids should be able to gain the benefits that we offer them in our society and our democracy through schooling. That schooling is the primary institution that they're involved in, maybe second to their family, right? But we also need to recognize that that's not happening, or at least it's not happening enough. So social mobility right now in this country is at a low point. And that means that, the great promise of public education, the one that my parents went through, who were, my father who grew up attending school and only speaking Sicilian, when he was 5 years old, graduated from high school, graduated from college, graduated from with his master's degree. That promise that we all believe that schools have and should have, it's not happening with as many children as we think. It's not happening. It's not changing the game. And so, my philosophy is that we need to treat every kid as a future important, valued, treasured contributor to society. And then we need to make that happen in whatever way we can. And sometimes that means doing things a little bit more or a little bit differently, and not just comparing them to the kid next to them who might be, climbing that ladder a lot easier than this kid. We need to be able to recognize that all these kids matter, and that we need to find ways to reach every single one of them.
So actually, that as you're talking about this, that actually made me think of something interesting. So I'm 31, so I'm considered the millennial generation. So everyone in my generation went to college. We were told, go to college, get this 4-year degree, and make something of yourself. And now many people are realizing that they have a lot of debt, and the opportunities may not be matching up with what they were promised or what they feel that they were to expect. So as we're equating that, now we have a new generation coming forward that is really questioning these things. So how do we, as educators, and yourself now, if you were a Board of Regent, how do we remind people that higher education is still critically important to the future, but at the same time, it's not the only pathway, and that there is value for these other, what can you do on the Board of Regents? Because I think that that's going to be critically important, because we don't want everyone to feel pigeonholed, but we do want people to know that, college actually is a good opportunity for a lot of students. They shouldn't discount it, but then there are these other options as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's a real challenge, because a lot of times people have a hard time looking, 2 steps ahead, because they're worried about today. And today it doesn't look like they can afford, the application, let alone the tuition, or get past the fact that they need to work today and not become, a student for 4 more years, right? So it is a real challenge. I mean, I think that we don't really engage our kids enough in all these kinds of things. I think that we need to listen more. We don't listen enough to children, teenagers, college students. We don't hear what these issues are, or if we do listen, sometimes we don't take it as seriously enough as we take our own perspectives, right? We need to figure out where they are and meet them where they are. I believe that if they know the value, that if they know that there's a value in a college education, that more would do it. But it's got to be true, right? So that means it's got to be it's got to be true economically. Yes, we could all go there with the cost and the loans and all of that stuff, but it's also got to be true intrinsically, right? So do we value, say, the ideas that emerge from a liberal arts education? Do we apply the ideas that emerge from a liberal arts education? Well, maybe they don't see it as maybe a former liberal arts major does. Maybe they don't. Maybe they look around and they say, there aren't people thinking critically out there. There are people going hard knocks with money and power. Maybe we need to make sure that we're placing the value that we say exists where it should exist. And I think too often kids, young people, young adults, they get it. It's just that, what they get isn't what we want them to get, because it's really a little bit different than we want it to be. So I would engage them.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Smith. And we'll go to Billy Jones. And Billy Jones, take us home, please.
Hello, Mr. Benedetto. Yes, I'm going to leave my camera off. My internet's not great right now, but thank you, Roger, for joining us. Appreciate you being here on such short notice. I think my colleagues have covered most everything that I wanted to cover, but I just wanted to bring up a point and maybe a question after that. And we talked about Regent Odekirk, how most of us on this call got to know her, and she made that connection with us. And you realize that this is a very vast area that you'll be representing if you're elected. There's a lot to it, a lot of school districts, a lot of land to cover. So we all appreciate how Bev got around, and she, I remember following her, coming out of snowstorms in rural parts of Franklin and Clinton County. And I was like, gee, she's got like a 2.5 hour drive just to get home, but she always made it to, superintendent's meetings or what have you. I just want to, I want people to realize, that there is quite a vastness of the area and that, to make that connection. How would you tell us your style on how you would make that connection and make the time to get around and to visit our school districts and our superintendents and all these different areas? It's very time consuming and there's a lot of effort to it. So just explain your style and how you would make that connection in such a vast area.
Sure. And I also observed Bev Oderkirk when she was getting in the car and driving all those miles and sometimes coming in late to some of our events and apologizing for that because she had such a long distance to drive. So I'm pretty aware of it. I guess the first place I'd go with that is the last time you and I spoke, I was working full time and now I'm not, right? So I just retired. And so I do have more time to be able to direct to this. But even more so, I see that as really being a positive. I love going to schools. I love seeing classrooms in action. I love talking to educators. I love talking to students. Probably my favorite thing to do in Lake Placid was to stand on the sidewalk and to chat with kids as they walked in, as well as with teachers, right? It was just a precious time. So, I was somewhat envious of Bev's ability to be able to make a call or send an email and to go see another school and another classroom. And it is a big, wide area, and there are a lot of schools. But for people who like, appreciate, and value schools and kids, and teachers, I think that that's maybe more of a personal benefit to this job than it is of a serious challenge. That and putting a lot of miles on the car, I think, is what I would have to do.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. And thank you for being here with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Mr. Catania, I thank you very much. On behalf of all the participants in today's discussion, we thank you for your time, for the thoughtfulness of your answers, and most of all, for being the last person we're interviewing today. Okay.
I'm glad about that too. Yeah.
You be well. We will be in contact with you first pretty soon, and all the best to you, sir.
Thank you, and thanks to everyone.
Thanks for everyone's participation.
And so ends today's Board of Regents interview with the candidates who have applied. I thank everybody for their thoughtfulness, for their time, and for their good questions they asked.
And thank you for
everybody-
running a great meeting today.
Thank you very much, Deborah. Everybody, see yous.